today. I have some great say this instead phrases when you are deeply defensive. And why do we defend ourselves before we even listen? Because we do. It's part of being human. And most of us aren't listening anyway, especially during conflict. We're waiting for our turn to defend ourselves. That's just how we're anthropologically wired to do it. So think about the last disagreement you had. Before the other person even finished speaking, you were already planning your response, right? Yeah, I do it too. I get it, okay? Were you collecting evidence to prove your point? Were you thinking, that's not what happened. That's not what I meant. They're wrong. If so, you're not alone. Your brain was doing exactly what it was supposed to do and designed to do. So here's what's fascinating. Your brain doesn't hear criticism as information. It often hears criticism as danger. Our brains just work that way. Long before you're consciously thinking about your response, a small part of your brain called the amygdala, you've probably heard of that. That's that fight or flight reptilian part of your brain. It's already gone to work. The amygdala is your brain's threat detector. That's its job. Its job is to keep you safe. Thousands of years ago, that meant protecting us from predators. Don't get me wrong, there's still some predators in the world today, but that's not what I'm talking about. Today, it also protects us from something much less obvious, from being criticized. Our brains, we don't want to be criticized, being rejected, feeling embarrassed or shamed, looking incompetent, even losing status. That's based in good gossip theory research. Gossip is on another video, okay? Here's where the science gets really interesting. And it's research by a neuroscientist. His name is Matthew Lieberman at UCLA. It's a great study. And there's several studies that go along with this theory and mindset. Social rejection activates some of the same brain regions involved in physical pain. Like, oh my gosh, including, and I'll give you the science words, the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex and the anterior insula. So I know those are big words, but what it really means is your brain doesn't simply hear criticism, it experiences a genuine threat. So that's why it comments when people say to you, like, can we talk? Oh, I need to give you some feedback. Feedback is one of the worst words to say in business. Find others. I'll do some little videos on that. Or that hurt my feelings. Oh, right? It immediately puts us on the defensive, and it happens before we even have time to think about it or process it. Neuroscience has shown that emotion happens in milliseconds, like before I even snap my fingers. And it's before conscious reasoning even happens. So by the time you're crafting your response, your brain has already decided whether you're safe. It's already decided, or if it's under threat. That's why you may interpret, explain, justify, or defend yourself before the other person has even finished talking. It happens all the time. If you don't participate in it, you see others doing it all the time. I need to say there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. You're normal. You're human. That's what our brains are designed to do. There's another fascinating explanation that I want to bring up. It's researcher David Rock. He developed what's called the SCARF model, which explains 5 social experiences the brain treats as reward or threat. And they are status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. You know, sometimes some of us never even get out of the fairness stage. It's not fair. I know you get it. Think about what happens during criticism. Maybe your confidence feels questioned. That's a threat to status. Maybe you didn't see the feedback even coming your way. That's a threat to certainty. And we have a lot of that going on, so we get overwhelmed with all the uncertainty and it just escalates and builds. Maybe you felt misunderstood. That's a threat to fairness. It's not fair when you're misunderstood, right? Your brain reacts to those social threats the same ways it reacts to physical danger. No wonder we become defensive. We're like defensive making machines. There's one more piece, and that psychologists call it identity protection. Identity protection. Our brains work really hard to preserve the story that we created for ourselves. I'm a good leader. I'm a caring parent. I'm a great daughter. I'm a thoughtful parent or a thoughtful partner. I'm a good person. So when someone says something that actually challenges your internal identity, your brain rushes in like I don't know, like Spider-Man to save the day and protect you. Not necessarily the truth, and it doesn't really come long-term as protection. It makes it look like you have no emotional intelligence and that you're reactive and triggered and all those things. That's all about the identity. That's when someone says, you hurt my feelings, and our first response was, that wasn't my intent, or you're misunderstanding me, or that's not what happened. Notice what's happening. We're protecting our identities before we've even understood what's happened here. And one of the biggest communication mistakes we make is confusing intent with impact. I just did a little short on that distinction. Intent explains what we meant. Impact explains what someone experienced. Healthy relationships, whether at home or at work or with family, make room for both. Both are important. So, how do we interrupt defensiveness when it's happening before it interrupts the conversation? Here's a few phrases. You might hear some of these phrases again and again, which is really important because our brain loves repetition. So that's why I repeat some of the things I say. So instead of defending yourself, one of my favorite ones in business and at home is tell me more. You're going to scream wanting to do that because you might be triggered, you might be upset, you might feel attacked. The last thing you frickin' want to say is tell me more. I know that. Then as you start practicing and getting better at it, you start disengaging from what's not yours. And your emotional intelligence starts going up. And pardon me. And when you say tell me more, what happens to your brain is saying, I'm gathering information. So instead of, I'm preparing my defense to defend myself. Curiosity, and that's what tell me more really does, is it injects curiosity. It's the fastest way to calm down your brain's reactive center, that threat response, because curiosity shifts the brain from expectation, protection to exploration. Another thing you might want to try saying instead is, help me understand. That's a fantastic phrase, not because you necessarily agree. You don't have to agree with them. No, you don't. Understanding always comes before resolution. I'm going to say that again. Understanding always comes before the problem can be resolved. You can disagree after you've understood someone. You can't solve what you don't understand, or if the person doesn't feel understood. Third thing is to try this. Here's what I'm hearing. You've heard this about repeating and mirroring people. The reason you hear it is because it frickin' works. It really works. Here's what I'm hearing, honey. Here's what I'm hearing, darling. Here's what I hear, my boss. Then repeat back what you heard, not your interpretation, their experience. People just want to be seen, heard, and valued. And when you do that on a regular basis, you are going to be perceived so differently than how you are now with the reactive defensiveness. Does that make sense? When you get their experience, their nervous system begins to settle, and so does yours. Yay. And one of the greatest lessons I've learned after decades of studying communication is this. People rarely, if ever, calm down because we explained ourselves. It's not how it works. It doesn't work that way. They calm down because they feel understood. Once someone feels heard, they're much more willing to hear you. That doesn't mean you were wrong. Doesn't mean you have to agree. It simply means you've chosen connection over correction. You've chosen to let go of correction and choose connection instead. And that's a game changer. Imagine how different our conversations would actually be if we spent less time proving and more time understanding. So the next time someone says something that gets in, that stings, that jars you, notice what your brain does, okay? It will want to interrupt. It'll want to explain, correct, defend, blah, 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 blah. So instead, you're going to pause, you're going to take a breath, and you're going to choose one of these phrases. Let me say them all again. Tell me more. Help me understand. Here's what I'm learning. Put those on Post-it notes on your computer or on your desktop. Those phrases do not change the conversation. They don't. They change what both your brains are doing during the conversation, and that's emotional intelligence and really high pressure. And sometimes that's the difference between winning an argument and strengthening and deepening a relationship. Of course, I'm cheering you on. Mwah. Bye.